All right, so we're going to go ahead and look at the 7th and 8th grade data here. And this common assessment I created using the model discussed, the baseline to end of year measurement. And this was only given to a pretty small group of students. There was actually one teacher volunteer that worked with me on this. Thank you, Mr. Mahalan. So these are his student scores, and this is for Ridgeview Junior High. The test was taken on the 11th by 130 students, and the average score was 94%. All right, so as you can see, you have a little snapshot of everything. So average student score, how many students submitted, how many were absent. If there were more groups going on right now, they would be listed under this. So we'll just go ahead and kind of, take a look at. So like we said, it was Bradley Mulholland. So now we have our subgroup tab. And for this assessment, we do not have any groups to compare. But if we were giving this across several schools, which was the idea, both of the junior high schools, then it would just have the other school, Lakeview Junior High School, stacked up against it over here. And you can look at it raw score, okay? The district average, and then just above and below standard, and the proficiency band. So this is the whole leveling up, the limited to basic to proficient, which is our largest student population is in proficient at 45%. And then accelerated and advanced. So in the analysis tab, we can look at individual questions and just take a deep dive into the questions to see, what we can do to improve the items themselves for when we use them again as people that make tests for students to take, teachers. And, we can look at things like, okay, how long did these questions take the students? Or, why don't we look at what the responses themselves looked like? And maybe there was a problem with the assessment that we need to check out. So, before we dive into the questions themselves, I would probably recommend to look at the frequency tab. And this is going to be really important for math, especially, and science. For language arts, it's not as vital to be up on skills that have to do with advanced graphing problems and those types of items, but rather you can see if there is a type of item that perhaps is glitching, or that when a teacher makes an assessment, there's always the possibility of a user error. So we've got multiple choice over here. We had 8 of those, and our students are doing pretty well on average here. So let's see. Our highest percentage is the 64, close with drop down. And then we can see, what types of questions those represent over here. And this can be a way that you kind of, take a deep dive into the item and just see what the heck did these kids do? How long did they take? And, if you want to show this to your students, you can throw it on present mode so it anonymizes the content. So, all right, this person seemed to be having trouble with the homophones. This person didn't attempt it. Correct. Okay, so this item, I think kids know how to get in here and, select a drop down. So I think we're pretty good on that. Let's see. And, we have our seconds and whatnot that the question takes over there. And then we're back on our standards-based report, and this class did very well. You can see the standards over here. There was a low ceiling, or a high ceiling, and a low floor on this test design. So you could see we have standards, reading informational text, standard 1, cite the textual evidence, right? That most strongly supports an analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from the text. So right here, our performance summary is 89.29%. That's very good, considering an A is going to be more around, a proficient score would be around 60 on a test like this. all right? Because this was modeled after the Ohio State test. So green is good. Just remember that. And you can look at just, how students were performing on the standards, on individual questions. You can see the questions that have multiple standards being addressed within them. And then you can see where students are struggling the most. And it looks down here like it's writing. Okay. And those are the higher level questions, the 9th and 10th grade. So we can take a look at question 25, question 11, question 9, and, just kind of see what's going on over here. So, all right, here's our live board, which is really cool. But I'm trying to go back to the Insights tab. Ah. Oh, cool. I thought it wasn't going to let me go back. So, we were looking at analysis by question, right? And we know that 11 was difficult. So students on average spent 1 minute and 9 seconds. These were 8th graders, and the district average was an 11%. So let's go ahead and look at the question. See what the problem was. Okay, select the answer choice that demonstrates correct usage of standard capitalization and spelling conventions. So the correct answer is down here. And, correct usage of standard caps and spelling, those are going to be things that we're going to be a little bit more tricky about because this is a DOK 1 recall item. And so, here, choice A is wrong because EdTech is not a proper noun. So they should know that. The difference between A and D is that. So that's why D is correct. And that is why this student did not get this right. But they spent 52 seconds on it. And so you can kind of just look between, so people, these students are thinking that this needs to be capitalized for some reason. So I'm wondering why they're making the assumption that EdTech is a proper noun. So that's something that could be retaught or, a misconception that could be cleared up. But yeah, they're choosing that a lot, like probably just as much as they're choosing option D. And if you look in the middle, they were avoiding B and C. So, what do we do with item 11? There seems to be some reteaching that needs to take place, or perhaps some empirical item improvement. So, we're going to take a look at question 11 and see how we can write this in a way where students might have a chance of being more successful, or where it's not so predictable between like the distractor and the other incorrect answers versus the answer that's correct. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go backwards again. And then we can look at how we did on our standards in Mr. Mulholland's class. Okay. All right, so 7th grade prerequisite, RL, so reading literature, grade 7. The standard's about using vocab in the proper context. If you look here, they actually scored better on the 8th grade question. So we can kind of take a look at these. Maybe the DOK is higher in the other question that made it more difficult or take more time. But yeah, we're doing pretty well in vocabulary over here. Then this is identifying a theme, and we're switching over to informational text. Our average score there is 70%. That's very good. It's above proficient, which would be a 60 on this. So the third standard is making connections in reading, and this would be in informational text. And this is a 76%. So, we're well above proficient. RI 8.1. So that's citing from informational text to support. All right. And then here is, making an inference, describing a theme or something and being able to say what a piece of writing says. So, if you look at these, the further you go, they give us the goodies first, and then we're going to get down into the items that were a little more difficult. So reading informational text standard 4, that's a vocab standard. And, there must have been something that was a little more difficult for the students. And we can take a peek at this one where we've got a 64, a 54, a 50, a 48, and then even lower numbers over here. So I think anything below a 25%, you should probably take a look at for improvement of the item. You can do it in a group, you can do it by yourself, but we can take a look at this item and decide, okay, is this a difficulty thing, or is it the way the question's written, or is this something they haven't been exposed to yet? Okay, and then we have a language standard here and here. So I'm going to come over here and look at this question. All right, so this is about writing, but we're not having them write because we wanted this to auto grade. Just like the error or the NWEA, this is supposed to be a baseline common test to show where kids are at. This would be best given at the beginning of a semester or the school year, and then a follow-up test of the same caliber, the same standards, the same types of questions, but different questions that would measure the growth. Okay, just like the I'm Ready would or the NWEA. So we have a question about writing here, and it says the student body president wants the superintendent to consider dropping the school uniform policy in exchange for a strict dress code. Below are 4 approaches to introducing his or her position on the subject in a letter to the school superintendent. Select the answer choice that represents the most effective and appropriate way to introduce his or her position, how they feel about it, to the district superintendent. All right. So this student, they thought it was C. C says the main concern beyond the price of the uniforms themselves is that the students need to learn who they are and feel comfortable expressing it in their dress choices. All right. I think I know where the confusion is here. And I honestly think this one's a little bit more on me. Because I haven't taught English to these students. I'm a district administrator. That's not what I do during the day. And I suppose that I was trying to fit a little etiquette lesson in there as well. And the way that I would open something like this up, especially if I were a student addressing the superintendent about a dress code, I would say the answer would be D. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter regarding the student body's recent request to eliminate the current dress code policy. So it's more like a topic sentence. It's more neutral and less charged. All right. But maybe, just maybe, no, I'm pretty sure there's a way I can write this question a little better. So I'm going to take a screenshot of it and add it to the queue. And, students are all over the place on this one, but they just don't want to choose D. So I'm wondering what the pacing guide looks like, or what Springboard says about how they should be introducing writing, especially when they're dealing with rhetoric and convincing people to have the same opinions that they have. So, all right, we're in our standards performance over here. I'm going to go back a little bit. And we're going to take a quick look at the domains. Okay, so just like viewing the live board is really important, looking at the domains. These reading informational text items are all together, and it's going to show us where the needs are. It's like a needs by domain analysis, like on iReady. So we've got our writing standards in here, and like I said, we're going across different difficulty levels and different standards that are appropriate for different students of different grade levels. So you can see where a 7th grade prerequisite type item is at almost an 80%. And then when it goes to a 9th or 10th, it's down to 23. So we can kind of take a look at what the difference is in difficulty between something that a 9th or 10th grader would get versus a 7th or 8th grader. Okay, because those standards are banded. All right, so I am going to record another voiceover about the closing the achievement gap piece of this. But here are our PLDs, our performance level descriptors. And you can see we've got our limited, our basic, our proficient, our accelerated, and our advanced. We want to level these students up, but we really want to level up those students that are in these vulnerable student groups. And at Pickerington, that is mostly African American students, English language learners, and students with disabilities. So the next screencast is going to have a demographic filter, and we're going to do an analysis and then take some time to write a goal or two that would support an initiative to stand behind our students and make sure that we're using this data in a powerful way. And we can discuss this with our evaluator on the OTES 2.0 and make sure that we discuss how it aligns with learning standards. It measures what's intended to be measured. It's not driven by offensive material or bias. Trustworthy results, okay? So we can compare these to other assessments like them or the state tests that are designed in the same manner with the student scores themselves. And, I'm just excited to show you how this assessment could be used as a piece of high quality student data at 2 different points in the year within the OTES 2.0 evaluation process.